A shelter dog gives birth, and the staff freeze when they see what comes out. Tiny, fragile pups. But something is terribly wrong. In the middle of a winter storm, one worker fights to keep them alive, even as powerful forces close in to make sure the truth never sees daylight. The deeper she digs, the darker the secrets become. Secrets tied to money, cruelty, and a man who will stop at nothing to cover his tracks. And when the fight for survival turns deadly, how far would you go to save lives everyone else has already given up on? I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The bitter January wind howled against the shelter's windows as Ria Calder burst through the front doors, her arms wrapped protectively around a trembling shepherd mix. Snow fell in thick flurries outside, but Ria's focus remained solely on the pregnant dog she'd found huddled beneath an overpass just 20 minutes ago. "Someone get the whelping room ready," she called out, her voice echoing through the shelter's main corridor. The dog in her arms panted heavily, her swollen belly heaving with each labored breath. They'd tagged her as June when she'd first been spotted in the area last week, but no one had been able to catch her until now, just in time it seemed. 2 other shelter workers scrambled to help, clearing the way as Ria rushed down the hallway. The whelping room was small but warm, with soft blankets and medical supplies at the ready. Ria gently lowered June onto the cushioned floor, her hands moving with practiced care despite the urgency of the situation. "Easy, girl," she murmured, running her fingers through June's matted fur. "You're safe now, we've got you." June's dark eyes met Ria's, filled with both trust and fear. A contraction rippled through her body, and Ria knew they didn't have much time. The first puppy came quickly, too quickly. Ria's heart sank as she saw its tiny form, completely hairless and motionless. The second followed moments later, equally bare and still. The room fell silent as the staff realized what they were seeing. The click of heels against linoleum announced Director Meredith Dalby's arrival. She stood in the doorway, her crisp suit a stark contrast to the practical shelter uniforms everyone else wore. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. "What's the situation?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "2 pups so far," Ria reported, her hands still working to clean the tiny bodies. "They're hairless, but then they need to be quietly managed," Dalby cut in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We can't risk the negative publicity. The shelter's reputation—" "No." The word left Ria's mouth before she could stop it, firm and clear. Dalby's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Ria repeated, already reaching for supplies. "They're alive. They just need help." Moving with desperate efficiency, Ria grabbed towels and began warming them with a hairdryer she kept specifically for emergency situations. She created makeshift heat packs using rice-filled socks warmed in the microwave, positioning them carefully around the tiny pups. "This is a direct order, Miss Calder," Dalby said, her professional veneer cracking slightly. "Those puppies won't survive and we can't afford." But Ria had stopped listening. She was already performing mouth-to-muzzle resuscitation on the first pup, her breath gentle but insistent. Long seconds ticked by, marked only by the sound of the winter storm outside and June's worried whimpers. Then, like a miracle, a thin cry pierced the air. Ria's eyes filled with tears as the first puppy squirmed, its tiny mouth opening in a squeaking wail. She quickly moved to the second, repeating the process while one of her co-workers maintained the warmth around the first pup. "Come on, little one," she whispered. "Fight." Another cry joined the first, weaker but unmistakably there. Ria's hands shook as she reached for her medical chart, recording vital signs and observations. The smaller of the 2 pups, the one whose cry was barely more than a whisper, she mentally named Sparrow. June wasn't finished. 3 more puppies followed, these ones with sparse but present fur. Ria attended to each one, her movements precise despite her exhaustion. She could feel Dalby's presence still lurking in the doorway, could sense the director's disapproval radiating through the room. "I'll need to report this," Dalby said finally, her voice cold. "Report whatever you want," Ria replied, not looking up from her charges. "But these puppies are going to live." Hours passed as Ria monitored the litter, checking temperatures and ensuring they were nursing properly. June proved to be an attentive mother, cleaning and nurturing each pup despite their unusual appearance. The hairless ones required extra care, more frequent monitoring, additional heat support, careful positioning to ensure they stayed warm enough. As night fell and the storm intensified, Rhea knew she couldn't leave them. She'd seen the look in Dalby's eyes, recognized the calculation there. The director might see these puppies as a liability, but Rhea saw them as lives worth saving. She waited until the evening shift change, when the shelter grew quiet except for the occasional bark or meow. Then she carefully locked the kennel door, positioning herself on a small cot she'd set up between the door and June's family. Anyone who wanted to get to these puppies would have to go through her first. The wind continued to howl outside, but inside the whelping room, it was warm and quiet. Rhea watched as the puppies nursed, their tiny bodies pressed together for warmth. Sparrow, the smallest, had found a spot right next to June's heart, protected by siblings on either side. "We're going to prove them wrong," Rhea whispered to the sleeping family. "Every single one of you is going to make it." She settled in for the night, her determination stronger than her fatigue. The digital thermometer beeped softly as she checked temperatures again, and her medical log slowly filled with careful notations. Outside her locked door, she could hear the occasional footsteps of the night staff, but no one tried to enter. The puppies needed checking every 2 hours, more frequently for the hairless ones. Rhea set her phone alarm accordingly, though she hardly needed it. Her body seemed to know instinctively when it was time for another round of monitoring. Each time she checked, she found herself counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all still breathing, all still fighting. June would raise her head each time Rhea approached, watching with careful attention but showing no signs of stress or aggression. The shepherd mix seemed to understand that Rhea was there to help, not harm. As midnight approached, Rhea heard the distinct sound of Dalby's heels in the hallway, accompanied by murmured voices. She straightened her spine and placed herself more firmly between the door and the whelping box. The footsteps paused outside, and Rhea held her breath, but after a long moment, they moved on. She exhaled slowly, her hands gentle as she adjusted the heat packs around the hairless puppies. "Nobody's going to hurt you," she promised quietly. "Not while I'm here." The night stretched on, marked by the regular rhythm of puppy checks, temperature monitoring, and careful documentation. Rhea's eyes burned with exhaustion, but she refused to let herself doze for more than a few minutes at a time. Too much was at stake. Sparrow gave her the most worry. The tiny pup seemed to struggle more than its siblings, its breathing sometimes becoming shallow and rapid. Each time this happened, Rhea would gently warm the pup against her skin, whispering encouragement until the breathing steadied again. "You've got this, little one," she murmured, during one such episode around 3 in the morning. "You're stronger than they think. We both are." Outside, the storm began to ease, the howling wind dying down to a gentle whisper. Inside, 5 tiny lives continued to fight, protected by their mother's warmth and Rhea's unwavering vigilance. She knew there would be consequences for her defiance. Dalby wasn't the type to let insubordination slide, but looking at the sleeping puppies, Rhea couldn't bring herself to care. She'd drawn her line in the sand. These puppies deserved a chance at life, regardless of how they looked or what anyone thought about their chances. As she watched June tenderly clean each of her babies, Rhea knew she'd made the right choice, whatever the cost might be. The night wore on, and Rhea maintained her vigil. Every breath, every tiny movement, every successful feeding was a small victory. She documented everything meticulously, building a record that would prove these puppies could survive, that they deserved the chance she'd fought to give them. In the quiet hours before dawn, as June and her puppies slept peacefully, Rhea allowed herself a small smile. They'd made it through the first night, the most critical time for any newborn pups, but especially for these vulnerable little ones. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, but for now, in this moment, they were alive and fighting, and that was enough. As the first hints of pre-dawn light began to creep through the small window, Rhea pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. The night's vigil had left her exhausted, but her mind remained sharp, focused on protecting the vulnerable family in her care. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the one person she knew would understand, Boone Ellery. The phone rang 3 times before his deep, steady voice answered. Ellery here. Boone, it's Rhea at the shelter. I need your eyes on something. It's important. She kept her voice low, conscious of the sleeping puppies. There was a brief pause. I'll be there in 15 minutes. True to his word, 14 minutes later, Rhea heard the familiar sound of Boone's heavy boots in the corridor. She unlocked the door, relief washing over her at the sight of his tall frame filling the doorway. His weathered face showed concern as he took in her disheveled appearance and the makeshift bed by the door. You've been here all night, he stated rather than asked, stepping inside. His experienced gaze immediately went to the whelping box where June lay with her puppies. Rhea nodded, running a hand through her messy auburn hair. Had to. Dolby wanted them euthanized. Said it would be bad press to have hairless puppies. Boone's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice neutral. Show me what we're dealing with. Together, they approached the whelping box. June raised her head, watching them carefully but remaining calm. Boone knelt beside the box, his movements slow and deliberate. Rhea appreciated how he always approached animals with respect, never assuming compliance. Hey there, Mama, he murmured softly. Mind if I take a look at you and your little ones? June's tail thumped once against the bedding, and she allowed Boone to gently examine her while Rhea held a flashlight. His experienced hands moved carefully over the dog's body, pausing at her neck and flank. You see it? He asked quietly. Rhea leaned closer. In the beam of the flashlight, she could make out a band of scarred tissue around June's neck, the fur grown back patchy and uneven. Rope burn? Yeah, old one, probably from being tied out. Boone's fingers traced another scar along June's flank. And this, consistent with what we see in backyard breeding operations, they likely kept her confined in tight quarters. The revelation hit Rhea like a physical blow. They dumped her when she got pregnant. Just threw her away to avoid responsibility. Looks that way. Boone straightened up, his expression grim. How many pups? 5. 3 with hair, 2 without, the smallest one. Rhea gestured to Sparrow, still tucked against June's belly. We almost lost this one, but they're all fighters. Boone pulled out his notebook and began documenting everything. The scars, the puppy's conditions, the circumstances of June's arrival. His pen moved steadily across the page as Rhea filled him in on the previous night's events and Dalby's orders. We need to establish a watch rotation, he said, finally closing his notebook. You can't stay here indefinitely, and these pups need round-the-clock monitoring. Rhea squared her shoulders. I'm not letting them out of my sight until I know they're safe. Legally safe. I understand that, but you need rest too. Boone's voice was gentle but firm. Let me help. I can adjust my rounds to check in regularly, and I know a few volunteers who can be trusted. They spent the next hour setting up a schedule, careful to include only those they knew would stand firm against pressure from above. Boone used his phone to photograph June's injuries and the puppies, establishing a clear timeline of evidence. One more thing, Boone said as they finished. These aren't just any shepherd mix puppies. Those markings, the bone structure, June's got heritage breed lines in her, probably why they were breeding her. Rhea felt her stomach sink, meaning whoever owned her might have resources, connections. Boone met her eyes steadily. People who breed heritage lines often do, and they don't like losing valuable breeding stock. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about saving a litter of puppies anymore. They were potentially going up against people with money and influence. Rhea looked at June and her puppies, remembering how close they'd come to being quietly managed out of existence. I won't let them have her back, she said firmly. No matter who comes asking, custody doesn't change hands without proof of ownership and an explanation for those scars. Boone nodded, his expression showing both approval and concern. I'll start the paperwork for a suspected cruelty case. Document everything. Feeding times, weight changes, temperatures, behavior. Build a record they can't dispute. As morning light began to fill the room, Rhea and Boone made one final check of the puppies. All 5 were nursing strongly now, even little Sparrow. June watched them with tired but trusting eyes, seeming to understand she was finally safe. Get some rest, Boone said as he prepared to leave. "I'll be back at noon to relieve you. And Rhea?" He paused at the door. "You did the right thing." Those words carried her through the morning hours as she continued her vigil, recording every detail in the medical log. She hadn't asked for this fight, and neither had Boone, but they both recognized its importance. This wasn't just about one dog and her puppies anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. The sound of the shelter coming to life filtered through the door. Morning staff arriving, dogs being fed, phones beginning to ring. Rhea checked her watch, knowing Dalby would be arriving soon. She straightened her shoulders and looked at the sleeping family in her care. Let them come, she thought. They'd find her ready. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when expensive leather shoes clicked down the shelter's linoleum hallway. Rhea hadn't even made it to the break room for coffee when she heard Meredith Dalby's voice, pitched higher than usual, greeting someone. "Mr. Parker, we certainly appreciate you coming so early. Let me just gather my staff." Rhea's hands still smelled of puppy formula from the 5 a.m. feeding. She stood in the whelping room doorway, watching as Dalby ushered a man in a crisp charcoal suit toward her office. His leather briefcase probably cost more than Rhea made in a month. "Miss Calder," Dalby called out, her tone clipped. "Join us, please." The office felt crowded with the three of them inside. Mr. Parker took the visitor's chair while Dalby settled behind her desk, leaving Rhea to stand. The lawyer didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I represent Mr. Colton Rafferty," he said, pulling documents from his briefcase. "He's a respected heritage dog fancier in the county. One of his valuable breeding females went missing last week, and we have reason to believe she's currently in your custody." Rhea's throat tightened. "You mean June?" "The animal's registered name is Aurora's Golden Dawn." Parker slid a photo across the desk, a shepherd mix that did look remarkably like June, though healthier and clearly younger. "Mr. Rafferty has extensive documentation of ownership, including AKC registration papers and breeding records." "I see." Dalby picked up the photo, frowning. "And the current litter?" Parker's lip curled slightly. "Defective stock. Mr. Rafferty's breeding program maintains the highest standards. These puppies are unfortunate accidents that need to be properly managed." The clinical coldness in his voice made Rhea's skin crawl. "2 of those accidents nearly died last night," she said. "We saved them." "Miss Calder," Dalby warned, but Rhea pressed on, drawing herself up straighter. "Under County Statute 27.4, any animal brought to this shelter remains in protective custody until legal ownership is verified and welfare concerns are addressed. June, or Aurora, whatever you want to call her, came in with injuries consistent with abuse." "Injuries?" Parker's eyebrows rose. "What injuries?" As if on cue, Boone appeared in the doorway, manila folder in hand. "I documented them this morning," he said, stepping into the office. "Rope burns on the neck, scarring on the flanks consistent with confined breeding conditions. I've got photos and measurements." "Officer Ellery," Dalby said. "This is Mr. Parker, representing Colton Rafferty." I heard. Boone's voice was professionally neutral as he opened his folder. "I've started the paperwork for a suspected cruelty case. Standard procedure when we find injuries like these." Parker's face tightened. "Mr. Rafferty is a prominent member of this community. His kennel operation brings significant revenue to the county. These accusations are both unfounded and potentially slanderous." "We're not making accusations," Rhea said. "We're following procedure. Any animal showing signs of abuse or neglect stays in protective custody while we investigate." "Miss Dalby," Parker turned to the director. "Surely we can handle this reasonably. Mr. Rafferty has been a generous supporter of this shelter. He understands the challenges of maintaining a facility like this on a county budget." Dalby shifted in her chair, glancing between Parker and her staff. "Perhaps we could expedite the process, given Mr. Rafferty's standing." "No," Rhea's voice was firm. "Those puppies nearly died last night. 2 of them were born without hair. They need specialized care and monitoring. We can't just hand them over without ensuring their safety." "Miss Calder," Parker said, his tone growing sharp, "you should consider your position carefully. Mr. Rafferty has considerable influence with the county board. A prolonged custody dispute could have Unfortunate consequences for this shelter's funding. Not to mention your employment status. Is that a threat? Boone asked quietly. A reality check. Parker began gathering his papers. We'll file for an emergency injunction this afternoon. In the meantime, I suggest you all think very carefully about how you want this to proceed. Mr. Rafferty can be either a valuable ally or a formidable opponent. He stood, straightening his tie. The puppies are defective, Miss Calder. They'll never meet breeding standards. Ask yourself if this is really the hill you want to die on. Rhea met his gaze steadily. Those puppies are alive because we fought for them. That's what matters to me. Then you're as foolish as you are unprofessional. Parker turned to Dalby. You'll have our paperwork within the hour. I trust you'll make the right decision. After he left, Dalby rounded on Rhea. Do you have any idea what you've done? Rafferty's donations keep our lights on. And that makes it okay to ignore abuse? Rhea shot back. To let him treat dogs like disposable property? Both of you, stop, Boone cut in. What's done is done. We follow procedure, document everything, and let the legal process work. That's all we can do right now. Dalby sank back in her chair, pressing her fingers to her temples. Just keep those dogs alive, Calder, and pray Rafferty doesn't make good on his threats. Rhea left the office, her hands shaking slightly as she headed back to the whelping room. The puppies would need another feeding soon. June lifted her head as Rhea entered, thumping her tail against the blankets. Don't worry, girl, Rhea whispered, kneeling to check on the litter. All 5 puppies were nestled safely against their mother's belly, including little Sparrow. I won't let them take you. Not like this. She could still hear Parker's expensive shoes clicking down the hallway, could still feel the weight of his threats hanging in the air. But as she watched June tenderly nose each of her puppies, Rhea knew she'd made the right choice. Some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The morning continued to unfold around them. Phones ringing, kennels being cleaned, visitors starting to arrive. But in the whelping room, Rhea maintained her vigil, recording temperatures and weights, mixing formula, and standing guard over the small family that had somehow become her responsibility. Let the lawyers come with their papers, she thought. They'd find her ready. Rhea's fingers flew across the keyboard, digging through old shelter files while the morning's confrontation still burned in her mind. Something about Parker's confidence, about Dalby's quick surrender, didn't sit right. The shelter's public records were open to anyone who looked, and right now, Rhea was looking very carefully. Come on, she muttered, scrolling through endless spreadsheets. Show me what you're hiding. Her eyes caught on a recurring entry. Heritage Breed Showcase. Sponsorship. The amounts made her whistle softly. $10,000 here, $15,000 there, all flowing from Rafferty's kennel events directly into the shelter's accounts. But it wasn't just money. There were equipment donations, veterinary supplies, even a new transport van, all credited to Rafferty's generous support of animal welfare. Rhea's stomach turned as she traced the pattern. No wonder Dalby was so eager to please him. He'd practically bought the shelter piece by piece. Her cell phone buzzed. Boone. Hey, she answered, still scanning the documents. You need to see these donor records. And you need to see what I found, Boone replied, his voice tight. Remember those complaints we couldn't trace? I dug deeper into the county database. 3 years of reports about Rafferty's operation, noise complaints, concerns about breeding conditions, even a few missing dog cases. But they all got buried. Rhea sat up straighter. Buried? How? Citations dismissed. Investigations closed without follow-up. And get this. Every time it involved either an expensive stud dog or a female about to whelp, the studs would win big at shows. But the mothers? They'd just vanish. Like June was supposed to, Rhea said softly. She glanced toward the whelping room where the shepherd mix lay, nursing her unusual litter. Boone, those hairless puppies. They've been bothering me. They don't look like simple birth defects. What are you thinking? I think they might be Exoloites Quintly crosses, Mexican hairless dogs. They're rare, valuable, and strictly regulated for import. Silence stretched across the line as the implications sank in. If Rafferty's been breeding them illegally, Boone began. Then June's litter could prove it, Rhea finished. But we'd need DNA tests to link them to his kennel. I know someone who can help. Dr. Hale, remember him? Semi-retired large animal vet, doesn't care much for politics or rich folks throwing their weight around. Rhea smiled for the first time that day. Call him. I'll get the whelping room ready. Within an hour, Dr. Linford Hale's battered truck pulled up to the shelter's back door. The veterinarian himself was as weathered as his vehicle, heavy-set, silver-bearded, wearing a jacket that had seen better decades. He carried a large medical bag and smelled faintly of tobacco and antiseptic. Quite a mess you've stepped in, he said by way of greeting, following Rhea to the whelping room. Boone filled me in. Let's see these pups. June raised her head as they entered, but didn't growl. Doctor, Hale had that effect on animals, a calm, steady presence that put them at ease. He set up portable warming units while Rhea explained the situation. DNA testing's not cheap, he warned, examining each puppy with gentle hands. But you're right about these little ones. Classic Zolo traits in the hairless ones. The others are carriers. Same gene, different expression. He straightened up, eyes narrowing. And if Rafferty's breeding them without proper documentation. Can you help us prove it? Rhea asked. Already brought the swab kits. He patted his bag. Need samples from all of them, especially the mother. If Rafferty's prize stud is the father, the markers will show it. Just need to be thorough with the collection and documentation. While Dr. Hale worked, Rhea heard clicking heels approaching. Dalby appeared in the doorway, her face tightening at the sight of the vet. Miss Calder, what is the meaning of this? Dr. Hale isn't on our approved veterinary list. Emergency consultation, Rhea said smoothly. The puppies needed immediate, specialized care. You know how important proper documentation is, especially with potential legal issues pending. Dalby's eyes darted between them, clearly catching the emphasis on documentation. I hope you understand the delicate position we're in, Mr. Rafferty's support. Means nothing if he's breaking federal breeding laws, Dr. Hale interrupted, not looking up from his work. These pups are evidence now. Might want to think about which side of this you want to be on when the dust settles. Color drained from Dalby's face. Without another word, she turned and left, her heels striking the floor with sharp, angry clicks. She'll run straight to Rafferty, Rhea said. Good. Dr. Hale sealed another sample vial. Let him sweat. Meanwhile, we'll get these to the lab. I know someone who'll rush the results. Owes me a favor from back when I treated his prize stallion. Rhea watched him work, hope mixing with determination in her chest. They had a chance now. Real evidence, proper documentation, and most importantly, allies who weren't afraid to stand up to power. Dr. Hale, she said quietly. Thank you. I know taking this on could cause problems, he snorted. Been practicing 40 years, seen every trick people use to turn a profit off animals' suffering. About time someone stood up to Rafferty's operation. He finished packing the samples, then fixed Rhea with a steady look. You did good, girl. Saving these pups, fighting for them. Don't let anyone tell you different. Boone arrived as Dr. Hale was leaving, bringing copies of all the buried complaint reports. The three of them spent another hour coordinating their plan. Samples to the lab, evidence organized, timeline documented. Every detail had to be perfect. They knew what they were up against. As the afternoon light slanted through the windows, Rhea sat beside June's bed, watching the puppies nurse. Such tiny lives, she thought, yet they might bring down years of corruption and abuse. Sometimes justice came from unexpected places. Dr. Hale's parting words echoed in her mind. The truth has a way of coming out. Our job is just to help it along. Dr. Hale worked methodically through the afternoon, his experienced hands gentle but precise as he examined each fragile puppy. The portable warming units he'd brought hummed steadily, maintaining the critical temperature the newborns needed. This little one's fighting hard, he murmured, checking Sparrow's heartbeat. Getting stronger by the hour. You did good work last night, Rhea. Rhea watched anxiously as he administered tiny doses of supplements. Will they make it? Given proper care, yes. They're past the most dangerous hours. He glanced up with a knowing look, though keeping them safe from humans might prove trickier than keeping them alive. Moving to his medical bag, Dr. Hale pulled out a set of sterile swabs and collection vials. Now for the important part. DNA testing needs to be bulletproof. Chain of custody, proper labeling, everything documented. Rich men like Rafferty, they've got lawyers who love picking apart evidence on technicalities. Rhea nodded, already pulling on fresh gloves. What do you need me to do? Witness and document. Write down everything. Time, date, sample number, take photos. We'll both sign off on each step. They worked together carefully, Doctor. Hale swabbing the inside of June's cheek while Rhea recorded every detail. Then they moved on to the puppies, one by one, treating each sample like precious evidence, because that's exactly what it was. Healthy pink gums, Dr. Hale noted as he swabbed the last pup. Good capillary refill. These aren't just mutts someone dumped. These are carefully bred dogs, expensive ones. The hairless trait, Noloitsquintly cross, almost certainly. Ancient breed, very valuable. Some folks pay thousands for pure lines. He sealed the final vial with practiced care. And if these pups match Rafferty's prize stud's DNA, well, that opens up a whole new set of questions about their mama here. The winter sun was setting early, casting long shadows through the windows when they heard a soft knock at the shelter's back door. Rhea tensed, but Boone was already moving to answer it, one hand near his service weapon. A slender young woman stood there, dark hair partially hidden under a plain jacket. Her eyes were striking but nervous, darting past Boone to find Rhea. "Are you the one who saved June?" she asked in a quiet voice. Rhea stepped forward cautiously. "Who's asking?" "My name is Lydia Rafferty." She swallowed hard. "And I need to tell you about my father's breeding operation." The room went absolutely still. Dr. Hale's hands stilled over his bag. Boone's posture shifted subtly, blocking the doorway without seeming to. "Come in," Rhea said finally, "but slowly. We've got newborns here." Lydia entered like someone expecting to be thrown out at any moment. When she saw June and the puppies, her composure cracked. "Oh God, she made it. When Dad said he'd handled it, I was afraid." "Handled what exactly?" Boone asked, his voice professionally neutral. Lydia's hands twisted together. "The breeding, the whole operation. He brings in champion studs from overseas, pairs them with unregistered females. When they're close to whelping, the mothers disappear. No paper trail, no questions about documentation." Rhea felt sick. "And June? She was different, sweeter than most. I tried to hide her, but..." Lydia's voice broke. "Last spring, I helped with a difficult whelping. The mother died. Dad said it was just business, ordered me to dispose of everything. That's when I left. But I couldn't stop thinking about all the others." Dr. Hale spoke up gruffly. "That's why you're here now? Guilty conscience?" "I want June safe, and I want it to stop." Lydia lifted her chin. "But you don't know my father. He'll destroy anyone who threatens his reputation. The Kennel Club events, the charity shows, it's all about maintaining his image as a heritage breed preservationist. While treating dogs like disposable breeding machines," Rhea said flatly. Lydia flinched. "Yes." Boone had been quietly taking notes. Now he looked up. "Miss Rafferty, would you be willing to make an official statement? We can keep it confidential for now, but we'd need details, dates, locations, specific incidents. He'll know it was me. He'll cut me off completely." "Isn't that what you wanted when you left?" Rhea asked quietly. "To be free of it." Lydia stared at June, who had raised her head to watch them all with wary eyes. Something seemed to settle in her expression. Yes, it was." She squared her shoulders. "What do you need to know?" For the next hour, they recorded Lydia's statement, names of imported studs, dates of suspicious disappearances, location of hidden breeding facilities. Boone documented everything with careful precision, while Dr. Hale occasionally asked sharp technical questions about breeding practices and veterinary care. "There's more," Lydia said finally. "Financial records, photographs, even DNA samples from previous litters. I I took them when I left. Insurance, I told myself. Or maybe just proof that it was real, that I wasn't crazy for running away. We'll need those, Boone said, but carefully. If your father suspects you're talking to us, he's dangerous when he's angry. And he's got friends in the county government, the show circuits, everywhere that matters. Rhea watched Lydia's hands trembling and made a decision. We'll protect you. All of us. She looked around at her unlikely allies, the steady animal control officer, the gruff country vet, and now this frightened but brave daughter. We're going to need each other to see this through. Lydia managed a shaky smile. I should go. Dad will notice if I'm gone too long. But I'll get you those records. She paused at the door. Thank you for saving her, for believing me. After she left, they gathered around June's whelping box, where the puppies slept peacefully, unaware of the storm building around them. Well, Doctor, Hale said, packing up his supplies. Reckon we've got ourselves a proper case now. DNA evidence, insider testimony, might be enough to crack Rafferty's fancy facade. If we can keep everyone safe long enough to use it, Boone added grimly. Rhea touched June's soft head, feeling the dog lean into her hand with trust that had been hard-won. We will, whatever it takes. The January night pressed against the shelter windows like black ice. Rhea made her final rounds, checking temperatures and heating pads in each whelping box. June lifted her head, nose twitching at Rhea's familiar scent. The puppies were finally sleeping soundly, their tiny bodies curled together for warmth. Good mama, Rhea whispered, adjusting the heat lamp. The red glow bathed the hairless pups in artificial warmth. Sparrow, the smallest, squeaked in his sleep. His survival these past days felt like a miracle, each breath a tiny victory. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then darkness slammed down like a door. No, no, no! Rhea fumbled for her phone's flashlight. The backup generator should have kicked in automatically. Instead, silence filled the shelter. No hum of heating units, no whir of ventilation fans, nothing but the startled rustling of animals. The beam of her light caught something wrong near the breaker panel. Thin wisps of smoke curled up like ghostly fingers. The sharp smell of burning plastic hit her nose. Her phone showed no signal. The shelter's landline was dead. The puppies. Without the heat lamps, the fragile neonates wouldn't last long in the freezing building. Already she could hear their weak cries starting. Rhea ran to the supply closet, yanking out portable carriers. Her hands shook as she lined them with towels, creating nest-like spaces. The smoke was thickening, making her eyes water. A crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the sound of running feet and a muffled curse. Rhea's heart jumped into her throat. Boone? She called out. No answer. More sounds of struggle. A body hitting the wall. Then Boone's voice strained. Stop! Police! The scuffle moved closer. Through the smoke-hazed darkness, Rhea glimpsed a masked figure in dark clothes grappling with Boone. They slammed into a row of empty cages. Metal rattled. A glove dropped to the floor as the intruder twisted free and disappeared down the corridor. Rhea! Boone shouted. Get the dogs out. I'll handle this. She was already moving. June whined as Rhea scooped up the puppies one by one, tucking them into the lined carriers. Her coat came off next, wrapped around the two weakest pups. Sparrow went against her chest, his tiny body trembling. The smoke was getting worse. Her lungs burned. The nearest exit was down the hall, but when she pushed the bar, it didn't budge. Come on! Rhea slammed her shoulder into the metal. Pain shot through her arm. The door groaned but held. She could feel heat through her shirt sleeve. The metal was hot, too hot. Another push. Her skin blistered where it touched the door. Sparrow squirmed against her chest, his breathing growing labored. Please, she whispered, backing up for one final try. This time when she hit the door, something gave way with a screech of metal. Cold air rushed in like a slap. Rhea stumbled out into the freezing night, carriers banging against her legs. The parking lot lights cast weak circles in the darkness. Her breath came in white clouds as she hurried toward her truck, checking each puppy. All 7 were breathing. June followed close behind, pressed against Rhea's leg. In here, girl. Ria opened the extended cab, creating a makeshift den with blankets from her emergency kit. Her hands shook as she settled the carriers, checking temperatures, rubbing tiny bodies to stimulate circulation. Sparrow stirred against her chest, letting out a thin cry. "That's it, little fighter," she murmured, tucking him in with his siblings. "Stay with me." Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights began to paint the night. Ria's arms throbbed where they'd touched the hot metal, but she barely noticed. She kept her hands on the carriers, sharing what warmth she could, counting each precious breath. Inside the shelter, flashlight beams bounced off smoke-clouded walls as first responders searched the building. Boone emerged, face grim, holding an evidence bag with the dropped glove. "Are they okay?" he asked, crouching beside the truck. Ria nodded, not trusting her voice. June licked her hand, and she realized she was crying. From smoke, from fear, from the pure relief of having gotten them all out alive. "The generator was sabotaged," Boone said quietly. "Fuel line cut, and the breaker panel." He shook his head. "This wasn't random vandalism." "Rafferty? Can't prove it yet, but those boot prints in there? Custom work. Expensive." His jaw tightened. "We'll get them, Ria. All of them." She looked down at the puppies, at June's watchful eyes, at her own blistered arms. "They tried to kill them, Boone. These helpless little ones. They would have let them freeze or burn. But they didn't. Because of you." His hand found her shoulder, steady and warm. "You saved them." Ria touched Sparrow's small head, feeling his heartbeat against her fingertips. Strong, despite everything. Like his mother. Like all of them, maybe. Emergency vehicles filled the parking lot now. Paramedics approached with burn kits and oxygen. The fire crew cleared the building. Through it all, Ria stayed with her charges, watching over their sleep, guarding against the darkness that had tried to claim them. The night wasn't over. Dawn felt very far away. But they were alive, and together, and for now, that had to be enough. The morning sun crept through the windows of Dr. Hale's veterinary clinic, where Ria had stationed herself since the evacuation. Dark circles rimmed her eyes from a sleepless night, spent monitoring the puppies. June lay curled in a makeshift nest, all 7 pups nursing steadily. Even little Sparrow had rallied after the chaos. His tiny mouth latched firmly alongside his siblings. Ria's phone buzzed. It was Boone. "DNA results are in," he said without preamble. His voice carried an edge of triumph. "The sire is confirmed. It's Rafferty's imported Xoloitzcuintli stud, Obsidian Night King." Ria's hand started shaking. "You're sure?" 100% match. And here's the kicker. That dog is already flagged in 2 previous breeding complaint cases. This ties everything together, Ria. The whole operation. She sank into a chair, relief making her knees weak. "So now what?" "I'm heading to Judge Martinez right now with a temporary custody order. These dogs aren't just strays anymore. They're evidence in a felony case. Criminal breeding, animal cruelty, and based on the import papers we found, international smuggling." Dr. Hale appeared in the doorway, reading from a tablet. "I've documented every injury on June and the pups. The rope burns, the old wounds, signs of multiple previous pregnancies, all photographed and logged with timestamps." The vet's normally gruff voice softened. "You were right about them, Ria." Ria moved to June's side, running gentle fingers over the shepherd mix's scarred flank. "Hear that, girl? They can't hurt you anymore." The next hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Boone arrived, with official evidence, tags, and custody papers bearing Judge Martinez's signature. Every mark on June was photographed again, every puppy examined and documented. Ria recorded weights, measurements, and vital signs with meticulous care. "Chain of custody has to be perfect," Boone reminded her, though she was already labeling each file with time, date, and location. "Rafferty's lawyers will try to poke holes in everything." "Let them try." Ria's voice was steel. She'd seen too much to back down now. Around noon, her phone lit up with a text from a shelter employee. Meredith Dalby had called in sick. The director's sudden absence spoke volumes. "Guess those donor ledgers are giving her second thoughts," Boone said when Ria showed him the message. Hard to explain all those connections to Rafferty's kennel events now that we know what was really going on. Rhea thought of all the times Dalby had pushed to quietly manage problem cases, all the paperwork that somehow disappeared when certain names were involved. The pattern was clear now, and damning. Dr. Hale joined them with fresh lab work. Pups are stable, but I want them here at least another 48 hours. Temperature regulation is still touch and go with hairless breeds this young. I'll stay, Rhea said immediately. I don't trust anyone else with them yet. Boone nodded. I'll have officers posted outside. After that break-in attempt, we're not taking chances. As afternoon settled into evening, Rhea maintained her vigil. She documented every feeding, every weight change, every small victory as the puppies grew stronger. June watched her with steady eyes, gradually relaxing as hours passed without threat. The clinic's quiet was broken by a knock. Lydia Rafferty stood in the doorway, looking both nervous and determined. I heard about the DNA results, she said. Dad's lawyers are in full damage control mode, but I have more. Breeding records, import documents, everything I saved before I left. Boone stepped forward. We'll need your official statement. Lydia's hands twisted together. I know. I'm ready. These dogs deserve justice. All of them did. Rhea studied the younger woman's face, seeing echoes of old pain there. Thank you, she said simply. This can't have been easy. Staying quiet was harder. Lydia moved to June's pen, keeping a respectful distance. She was one of the lucky ones. She got away. Found you. The weight of those words hung in the air. How many others hadn't been so fortunate? How many had disappeared into that breeding operation, used up and discarded? But that ended now. Rhea looked at her growing stack of documentation. Photos, medical records, DNA results, witness statements. Every piece was a link in a chain that would finally bring down Rafferty's operation. June sighed in her sleep. Pups snuggled close. Sparrow had wiggled to the top of the pile, his tiny form rising and falling with each breath. Fighter's spirit, Rhea thought. Like his mother. Like everyone who'd helped get them this far. She opened her laptop and began another detailed log entry. Every fact, every observation, every piece of evidence carefully preserved. The truth would be their shield now, and their sword. Outside, the sun slipped toward evening. Officers changed shifts, nodding to Rhea through the windows. Boone's desk at the station filled with paperwork as he built their case. And in a quiet exam room, 7 small lives grew stronger under the watchful eyes of those who had chosen to stand and fight. Rhea spread maps and blueprints across the break room table, her coffee growing cold beside her. Lydia pointed to different areas of her father's property, her finger tracing paths between buildings. The main barn has cameras here, here, and here, she explained, marking spots with a red pen. But the side entrance by the feed storage is a blind spot. Dad never fixed it because that's where he brings in the unregistered dogs. Boone leaned forward, his weathered face intense. That's our way in. We'll need teams here and here. He marked positions with quick X's. How many buildings total? 3 barns, the main house, and 2 storage sheds, Lydia replied. Her hands shook slightly as she drew. The breeding shed is the smallest one behind the north barn. That's where... She stopped, swallowing hard. Rhea touched her arm gently. You don't have to go back there. Yes, I do. Lydia's voice strengthened. I should have spoken up years ago. Those dogs suffered because I was too scared. Dr. Hale shuffled through a thick stack of medical records. Well, they're speaking for themselves now. He tapped June's file. Every scar tells a story. Every injury matches a pattern of abuse. And that DNA test is ironclad. Those pups came from his prize stud. Rhea nodded, determination settling over her like armor. So we use his greed against him. He wants these pups badly enough to break a court order? Let's give him the chance. They spent the next hour planning the details. Lydia would call her father, claiming she'd convinced shelter staff to arrange a quiet handover of June and the litter. The meet would happen at his own property, his comfort zone, where he'd feel in control. He'll want to inspect them first, Lydia said. Make sure they're worth taking. Perfect. Boone pulled out a small recording device. We'll wire the carriers. Every word he says about owning or breeding them becomes evidence. Dr. Hale grumbled as he prepared health certificates. Just keep those pups warm during transport. They're stable now, but stress could set them back. Rhea had already thought of that. She demonstrated the modified carriers she'd prepared, lined with chemical heat packs and monitoring sensors. We'll know instantly if anything's wrong, and backup transport is ready if we need to abort. They ran through the plan multiple times, refining each step. Deputies would be stationed out of sight. Surveillance teams would document everything. Most importantly, they'd catch Rafferty, asserting ownership of dogs legally held as evidence, a direct violation of the court order. Lydia's hands trembled as she picked up her phone. I should make the call now while he's usually in his office. They all fell silent as she dialed. Rhea watched anxiety and determination war on the young woman's face. Daddy? Lydia's voice was carefully casual. I need to talk to you about June. Yes, the shepherd mix at the shelter. I think I can help get her back. She played her part perfectly, dropping hints about sympathetic staff and mentioning the pup's unique features. Rhea could practically hear Rafferty's greed through the phone. Tomorrow morning would work, Lydia continued. But you'll need to be there in person. Yes, I know you're busy, but they won't release them to anyone else. Of course I understand their value. When she hung up, her face was pale, but resolved. He'll be there, 9 o'clock tomorrow. Boone immediately started coordinating with his teams. I want officers in position an hour before. Every approach covered, every exit watched. Nobody moves until we have clear evidence of violation. Rhea focused on preparing the animals. June would travel in a separate carrier from the pups, both for safety and to force Rafferty to make multiple claims of ownership. She packed emergency supplies, double-checked the heating systems, and rehearsed every possible scenario. Remember, Dr. Hale advised, your only job is to protect those dogs. Let law enforcement handle Rafferty. The minute anything feels wrong, you get them out of there. They worked late into the evening, checking and rechecking every detail. Rhea couldn't help worrying about all the things that could go wrong. What if the recordings failed? What if Rafferty brought muscle? What if the pups couldn't handle the stress? Boone seemed to read her thoughts. We've got this, he said quietly. You're not alone this time. That simple statement steadied her. She looked around at her unlikely team, a country vet, a brave daughter standing against her father, a dedicated officer who'd believed in her from the start. Together, they'd built a case that could finally stop Rafferty's operation. As night fell, they made final preparations. Evidence bags were sealed, cameras were charged, routes were confirmed. Tomorrow would change everything. For June, for the pups, and for every other dog in Rafferty's breeding operation. Rhea made one last check on her charges. June lifted her head, dark eyes trusting. Little Sparrow and his siblings slept peacefully, unaware of the battle being fought in their name. Just a little longer, she whispered, gentle fingers stroking June's ears. Just one more fight, and then you'll be truly safe. Behind her, Boone was running through deployment positions with his teams. Dr. Hale assembled his field kit, muttering about proper evidence collection. Lydia studied the property maps, determined to remember every detail that could help. Tomorrow, they would turn the tables. Tomorrow, they would make Rafferty's own arrogance work against him. Tomorrow, justice would finally have its day. But tonight, Rhea kept watch. She documented every heartbeat, every breath, every tiny movement. Each note in her log was another link in the chain of evidence that would bring down a corrupt empire. In the quiet of the clinic, surrounded by the soft sounds of sleeping dogs, she felt the weight of what they were attempting. But she also felt the strength of those standing with her, the rightness of their cause, and the unshakable conviction that had brought them to this moment. Dawn would bring their greatest challenge. For now, she guarded her charges and prepared her heart for the battle ahead. Whatever came tomorrow, she would face it with truth as her shield and justice as her aim. The pups slept on, innocent and unaware. June sighed contentedly in her kennel, and in the darkness, a small team of determined souls made ready to right a long-standing wrong. The January morning dawned clear and brittle. Frost painted the barn windows in delicate patterns as Rhea checked her watch for the 100th time. 8:15, 45 minutes until Rafferty was due. Inside the old structure, deputies had positioned themselves behind hay bales and in the shadowy horse stalls. Recording equipment hummed softly, ready to capture every word. Rhea's heart thundered against her ribs as she waited near the main entrance, a clipboard in her trembling hands. Doctor. Hale's truck was parked just out of sight, the precious cargo of June and her pups safely secured inside with the heaters running. The old vet sat at the wheel, ready to drive them to safety at the first sign of trouble. Remember, Boone's steady voice came through her earpiece. Let him do the talking. Just confirm the basics. Rhea nodded, though he couldn't see her from his position. The weight of their plan pressed down on her shoulders. One mistake could unravel everything they'd worked for. At 8:55, gravel crunched under tires. A black SUV pulled up, its polished surface reflecting the winter Sunday. Colton Rafferty emerged like a king from his carriage, his expensive coat swirling around his legs. "Let's make this quick," he announced, striding into the barn. His eyes swept past Rhea as if she were merely part of the scenery. "Where are my dogs?" Rhea's fingers tightened on her clipboard. "You're here about the shepherd mix and her litter?" Obviously. His contempt was palpable. "June and her pups. My property, which your shelter had no right to keep from me. Could you clarify your claim to ownership?" Rhea kept her voice professionally neutral, though her pulse raced. Rafferty's laugh was sharp and cold. "I bred her myself. Top bloodlines, carefully planned pairing. Those pups represent a significant investment." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. "Here's June at my facility. Now, enough games. Where are they?" Behind a stack of hay bales, a camera whirred softly. Every word was being recorded, every admission captured. "And the pups?" Rhea pressed gently. "You're claiming ownership of them as well." "Every last one," Rafferty snapped. "Whatever your bleeding heart shelter thinks, those dogs are mine. I own the dam, I own the sire, I own the entire litter. Now produce them immediately, or my lawyers will." "Colton Rafferty!" Boone's voice rang out as he stepped from the shadows. "You are under arrest for multiple violations of animal welfare statutes and contempt of a standing court order." The color drained from Rafferty's face as deputies emerged from their hiding spots. "What is this?" "This is justice," Boone said, producing handcuffs. "You just claimed ownership of animals legally held as evidence. That's a direct violation of Judge Martinez's order." Rafferty lunged toward the door, but deputies blocked his path. "You can't do this!" "Do you know who I am?" "We know exactly who you are," Boone replied, securing the cuffs. "And we have DNA proof linking your prize stud to June's litter. We have documentation of your breeding operation. We have witness testimony about your treatment of dogs." As Boone read him his rights, Rafferty's composure cracked. "Lydia," he spat, "that ungrateful girl. She'll regret this." "Add witness intimidation to the charges," Boone told a deputy calmly. Rhea watched as they led Rafferty to a waiting patrol car, his protests echoing across the frozen ground. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her pen to sign the arrest documentation. "You did good," Boone said softly, appearing at her shoulder. "It's over." But it wasn't quite over. Back at the shelter, news of Rafferty's arrest sent shockwaves through the administration. Meredith Dalby's office door remained closed as county investigators combed through financial records and donor logs. By noon, copies of every ledger had been made. The evidence of kickbacks and misappropriated funds was overwhelming. Rhea watched from the kennel area as Dalby emerged, carrying a cardboard box of personal items. The former director paused at Rhea's station. "I hope you're satisfied," she said tightly. "This was never about satisfaction," Rhea replied. "It was about doing what's right." Dalby's heels clicked sharply as she walked away, her resignation letter already on the county supervisor's desk. For the first time in weeks, Rhea felt like she could breathe freely. She made her way to the whelping room where June and her pups had been returned. The mother dog's tail thumped against the blankets as Rhea entered. "You're safe now," she whispered, kneeling to check on the litter. "All of you." Little Sparrow, still the smallest but growing stronger every day, squeaked and nuzzled her hand. His siblings, all 6 of them, were thriving despite their rough start. Soon they would be ready for loving homes, real homes, where they would be cherished as family members, not breeding stock. Dr. Hale stopped by to check on his patients, his gruff manner softened by satisfaction. "Quite a morning," he commented, examining each pup carefully. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Rhea managed a tired laugh. "I couldn't have done it without you. Any of you." "Team effort," he agreed, "though you were the spark that started it all. Not bad for a kennel tech they tried to push around." The rest of the day passed in a blur of paperwork, statements, and media calls. Rhea let the shelter's PR team handle the press, focusing instead on what mattered most, the animals in her care. As evening approached, she found herself in the quiet, whelping room again. Boone appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her one. Their fingers brushed as she took the cup, sending a warm tingle up her arm that had nothing to do with coffee. She looked up at him, steady, reliable Boone who had believed in her from the start. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now?" He settled beside her, watching June nurse her pups. "Now we make sure these little ones find good homes. We help build a better shelter system. We keep doing what's right." There was something comforting about that "we," something that spoke of shared purpose and future possibilities. "I like the sound of that," she admitted. The winter sun was setting, painting the room in soft golden light. June sighed contentedly, her pups safe and warm against her side. In that moment, Rhea felt the full weight of what they'd accomplished wash over her. They had faced down corruption and won. They had saved not just June and her pups, but potentially countless other dogs from a cruel system. And somehow, in the midst of it all, she had found her own strength, and people who believed in her. Boone's shoulder pressed gently against hers as they sat in comfortable silence, watching the small family they had fought so hard to protect. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, this quiet victory was enough. The victory crumbled faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. The call came just after lunch. The DNA evidence was being suppressed due to a gap in the chain of custody documentation. Someone had failed to initial a transfer form, creating a critical break in the paper trail. Rhea's stomach dropped as she listened to Boone explain the technical details. Her hands grew cold against the phone. "But we have Lydia's testimony," she protested. "The photographs, the medical records, those support the case," Boone said heavily. But without the DNA linking June to his prize stud, the judge granted bail. Rafferty's lawyer argued successfully that the rest is circumstantial. The words hit her like physical blows. All their careful work, undone by a single missing signature. She thought of June and her pups, finally settling into a routine, finally safe. Or so she'd thought. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "He posted bail 20 minutes ago." Rhea was already moving, heading for the whelping room. "I'm moving them. We'll put them somewhere he can't." The crash from the front lobby cut her off. Shouts followed, then the sound of running feet. "Rhea?" Boone's voice sharpened with alarm. "What's happening?" She dropped the phone and ran. The temporary receptionist they'd hired to replace Dalby's assistant was sprawled across the floor, papers scattered around her. The girl looked up at Rhea with wide, frightened eyes. He pushed right past me," she stammered. "I couldn't stop him." Rhea's heart stopped as she heard the distinctive click of the whelping room door. She sprinted down the hallway, her shoes slipping on the polished floor. Too slow. She was too slow. By the time she reached the room, Rafferty was already there. His face was twisted with rage as he yanked June's leash from its hook. The mother dog yelped in pain and fear. "Stop!" Rhea lunged forward. "You can't!" Rafferty's backhand caught her across the face, sending her staggering into the wall. Through watering eyes, she saw him scoop up tiny Sparrow, stuffing the struggling pup into his coat. "My property," he snarled. "Should have put them down when you had the chance." June fought the leash, trying to get back to her other pups. Rafferty jerked her forward brutally. The remaining 6 puppies wailed, their cries piercing Rhea's heart as she pushed herself up. But Rafferty was already dragging June through the door. The mother dog's nails scraped desperately against the floor as she was forced away from her babies. Rhea scrambled after them, her cheek throbbing. She caught a glimpse of Sparrow's small face, his eyes wide with terror, before Rafferty shouldered through the emergency exit. The bitter January wind howled through the opening. Outside, the sky had turned an ominous slate grey. The forecasted blizzard was rolling in fast, heavy snowflakes already starting to swirl. Rhea ran into the parking lot, just in time to see Rafferty's truck fishtail onto the road, June visible in the cargo bed. Sparrow clutched somewhere inside the cab. She fumbled for her phone with numb fingers, dialing Boone even as she ran to her own car. "He took them," she choked out. "He took June and Sparrow. The others are still here, but where are you?" Boone's voice was tight with controlled urgency. "Parking lot. He's heading west on County Road 8. Please, you have to stop him." "Stay there," Boone ordered. "The storm's coming in fast and we need a new warrant. If you follow him now, they'll freeze." The words tore from her throat. "Sparrow's too little. He needs the warming pad. He needs his mother." "Rhea," Boone's voice gentled, though she could hear the strain in it. "Listen to me. We'll get them back. But if you go after him now, in this weather, without backup or authority, you'll make things worse. He's looking for a reason to press charges. Don't give him one." She stood in the thickening snow, watching Rafferty's taillights disappear into the growing whiteness. Every instinct screamed at her to follow. But Boone was right. Rushing in without a plan had led to this disaster in the first place. Back inside, she found the remaining puppies crying in distress, missing their mother's warmth and comfort. Her hands shook as she checked their heating pad, adjusted their blankets. One tiny face after another turned toward her, seeking reassurance she couldn't give. The temporary worker was still sitting on the floor in the lobby, looking shell-shocked. "I'm so sorry," she whispered as Rhea passed. He seemed so sure he had the right." "Not your fault," Rhea managed, though each word felt like glass in her throat. She helped the girl up, guided her to a chair. "Are you hurt?" The girl shook her head, but her hands were trembling. Rhea found her a cup of water, then returned to the whelping room. She couldn't look at the empty space where June should be. Couldn't bear to see Sparrow's favorite blanket, still warm from his tiny body. Outside, the storm was building to a roar. The windows rattled with each gust of wind, and the snow was falling so thick it obscured the parking lot completely. Somewhere out in that whiteness, a mother and her baby were at the mercy of a cruel man and crueler weather. Rhea sank down beside the remaining puppies, gathering them close. She should have done more. Should have posted guards, moved them to a safer location, found some way to keep them protected. Every choice she'd made, every step that had led to this moment, played through her mind in an endless loop of regret. The sound of boots in the hallway made her look up. Boone stood in the doorway, snow melting on his shoulders. The expression on his face told her everything she didn't want to know. "Highway patrol can't get through," he said quietly. "Storm's too bad. They've closed most of the major roads. So we just wait?" Her voice cracked. "While he does, God knows what to them, we get the warrant. We coordinate with every department in a 50-mile radius. As soon as there's a break in the weather, they might not have that long." She stroked one of the crying puppies, trying to calm it. "Sparrow's the runt. He needs constant care. And June, you saw how he handled her. He'll hurt her for fighting him." Boone crossed the room and knelt beside her. His hand found her shoulder, steady and warm. "We'll find them," he promised. "But we have to do it right this time. No mistakes." The storm howled outside, drowning out the soft whimpers of the puppies. Rhea stared at the empty crate where June should be sleeping with her babies, at the small blue blanket that still held Sparrow's scent, at all the evidence of lives disrupted, trust broken, safety shattered. The darkness pressed in, heavy as the snow that was burying the world. Somewhere out there, in the heart of the storm, June and Sparrow were alone with a man who saw them as nothing but property to be possessed or destroyed. And there was nothing she could do but wait, and hope, and hate herself for not finding a way to protect them better. The silence in the whelping room shattered as Lydia burst through the door, her face flushed from running. Snow clung to her dark hair, melting quickly in the heated air. Her hands shook as she gripped the doorframe. "I know where he's taking them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's a place, a shed, in the north pasture." Ria's heart leaped into her throat. Where exactly? Lydia stepped fully into the room, hugging herself against memories that seemed to physically pain her. It's where he deals with problems. Dogs that don't meet his standards. Mothers who fight back when he takes their puppies. Her voice cracked. "He calls it culling stock." Boone moved closer, his notepad ready. "Give us exact directions." "Take County Road 12 north for about 3 miles, Lydia said, her words coming faster now. "There's a gate with a broken top hinge. You can't miss it. The track beyond it runs east through 2 pastures, the shed's tucked against a windbreak of cedars." She swallowed hard. "He'll use the storm as cover. Nobody goes out there in weather like this." Ria was already moving, gathering supplies. She stuffed blankets into a waterproof bag, added bolt cutters, a heavy flashlight. Her hands found the small blue blanket that still held Sparrow's scent, that went in too. "You can't go out in this," Boone protested, though she heard the uncertainty in his voice. "The roads are closing. We need that warrant." "Sparrow won't survive until morning without proper care." Ria cut him off, zipping the bag with sharp, decisive movements. "June's still nursing. She needs regular food and water. We wait, we lose them both." "It's not just the weather," Lydia added softly. "When he's angry like this, he won't wait to make his point. Please." Ria met Boone's eyes. "I'm going, with or without backup." For a long moment he stood silent, then his shoulders settled, decision made. "Let me get the stock gate from my truck. We'll need it for transport." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Dr. Hale first. He needs to know our route in case things go wrong." Relief flooded through Ria. She turned to Lydia. "Any security we should know about?" "Just a padlock on the shed. But there's no electricity out there, no heat. He won't expect anyone to follow him in the storm." Lydia's fingers twisted together. "Be careful, when he feels cornered." "We will be," Ria promised. She checked the remaining puppies one last time, making sure their heating pad was secure and water bottle full. "Stay with them? Call Dr. Hale if anything changes?" Lydia nodded, already moving to settle beside the whelping box. Her hands were steadier now, gentle as she adjusted blankets around the tiny bodies. Boone returned, snow swirling in behind him. "Gates loaded. Hale's on standby with his truck and medical kit. You ready?" Ria shouldered her supply bag, pulled on her heaviest coat. Yes. They stepped out into a world transformed by white. The snow was falling so thick it seemed solid, like a wall of cotton batting lit by the security lights. Wind howled around the building's corners, driving ice crystals against any exposed skin. Ria climbed into Boone's truck, clutching her bag close. The headlights carved twin tunnels through the darkness as they pulled out of the parking lot. Beyond their beams, the night was absolute. "County Road 12, Boone muttered, squinting through the windshield. The wipers fought a losing battle against the accumulating snow. 3 miles north. Ria leaned forward, straining to see through the whiteout. Every second felt like an eternity. Every mile stretched impossibly long. Somewhere ahead in this blinding storm, a tiny puppy was dying of cold, and his mother was at the mercy of a man who saw them both as nothing but property to be disposed of. "We'll find them," Boone said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed once. "We'll make it right." The truck's headlights swept across a metal gate, its top hinge hanging loose just as Lydia had described. Ria's heart pounded. They were on the right track. Now, they just had to reach the shed before it was too late. Boone shifted into 4-wheel drive as they turned onto the unpaved track. The snow was deeper here, unplowed, and treacherous. But somewhere ahead, through the howling white darkness, June and Sparrow were waiting. And this time, Ria wouldn't let them down. Through the thick curtain of snow, dark shapes of cedar trees finally emerged. The shed hunched behind them, a squat shadow against the white. Even from here, Rhea could see an orange glow flickering through its weathered boards. "There!" she shouted, already fumbling with her seatbelt. Boone killed the engine and grabbed the stock gate from the truck bed. The wind nearly knocked them both off their feet as they struggled toward the building. The smell hit them first. Sharp, chemical kerosene cutting through the clean snow scent. Then came June's frantic barking from inside, punctuated by a tiny, desperate mule that made Rhea's heart clench. Sparrow was still alive. They burst through the door to find chaos. Flames were already climbing the walls, feeding on kerosene-soaked straw. The heat slammed into them like a physical force. Through the smoke, Rhea spotted June thrashing against a heavy chain near the back wall, her eyes wild with panic. A small crate sat just beyond her reach, where Sparrow's weak cries were growing fainter. Rafferty stood in the center of the inferno, empty kerosene can at his feet, his face twisted with rage as he saw them. "Should have stayed away." Rhea didn't waste breath responding. She lunged for June, wrapping the chain around her forearm. The metal bit into her skin as the terrified dog pulled against it. "Come on, girl," she urged, tugging steadily. "Come with me." Above them, the rafters groaned. Sparks rained down like deadly fireflies. Boone shouldered the stock gate up against a sagging beam, buying them precious seconds as the structure began to fail. The air grew thinner with each breath. Smoke burned Rhea's lungs, but she refused to let go of June's chain. Her knuckles were white with effort as she dragged the frightened shepherd toward the door. One step, another. The dog's resistance slowly gave way to trust born of desperation. A section of the roof collapsed behind them in a shower of burning debris. The heat was unbearable now, the flames spreading faster than seemed possible. Rhea stumbled on the uneven floor but caught herself, never loosening her grip on June's chain. They had to make it. They had to. The fire roared higher, consuming everything in its path, but Rhea kept moving forward, June finally matching her pace step by desperate step. Through the thickening smoke, a dark shape lunged at Rhea. Rafferty's face contorted with rage as he reached for her throat. But before he could make contact, Lydia stepped between them, her slight frame trembling but resolute. "Stop it, Dad." Her voice shook but held firm. "You can't hurt anyone else. Not anymore." Rafferty hesitated for a split second, stunned by his daughter's defiance. That moment was all Boone needed. He surged forward, driving his shoulder into Rafferty's chest and slamming him against the wall. The impact knocked the wind from the older man's lungs. "You're under arrest," Boone growled, wrestling Rafferty's arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut with satisfying finality. Rhea scrambled towards Sparrow's crate, her fingers clawing at the latch. The tiny pup felt frighteningly still as she lifted him out, but then he squirmed weakly against her palm. She tucked him carefully under her coat, close to her heartbeat, and stumbled toward the door. The roof gave an ominous groan above them. Burning timbers crackled and shifted. They had seconds, maybe less. "Move!" Boone shouted, shoving Rafferty ahead of him. Lydia grabbed June's chain, helping Rhea guide the frightened dog through the smoke. They burst into the frigid night air, just as a tremendous crash echoed behind them. The roof collapsed inward, sending a geyser of sparks into the snowy sky. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing closer by the second. Rhea's legs gave out. She sank to her knees in the snow, still cradling Sparrow against her chest. The pup's tiny heart fluttered against her own racing pulse. Alive, still alive. Boone's voice cut through the chaos as he read Rafferty his rights. "You're charged with arson, destruction of evidence, and kidnapping of evidence animals." He tightened the cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." The fire's glow painted everything in shades of orange and red, but Rhea barely noticed. She was focused entirely on the precious warmth against her heart, counting each of Sparrow's breaths like a prayer of thanksgiving. The aftermath of the fire brought waves of justice rolling in. With multiple charges of arson, animal cruelty and abduction, bolstered by Lydia's brave testimony, Colton Rafferty faced the full weight of the law. The jury took just 3 hours to return a guilty verdict. Meanwhile, Meredith Dalby's creative accounting caught up with her as fraud charges piled up from the shelter's financial investigation. In the warmth of Dr. Hale's clinic, The puppies thrived under his watchful care. "They're ready for their forever homes," he announced one spring morning, his gruff voice softening as he watched them tumble around their mother. Lydia, healing in her own way, adopted 2 of the pups. Her eyes shone with purpose as she signed the papers. "They'll help me start fresh," she said quietly. Ria's temporary fostering of June and Sparrow turned permanent to no one's surprise. "Failed foster, succeeded family," she joked, watching them settle into her small house. One evening, Boone arrived with news that changed everything. "The county's forming a special task force for animal cruelty cases," he explained, helping her set up a cozy dog bed by the hearth. "We need someone with your expertise, Ria. Someone who never gives up." She looked up from where Sparrow dozed on her chest, still hairless but healthy and strong. The pup's gentle breathing matched her own as she considered Boone's steady presence, the work ahead, and the quiet certainty that she'd found her place at last. In the soft lamplight, their shared smiles held promises of partnership, both professional and personal, that needed no words. "Yes," she said simply, and reached for his hand. "Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul."